And one of the things that makes that national experience really kind of exciting is that for the first time ever, we're seeing an empowered black middle class. Whole areas of America are seeing the emergence for the first time of a urban, large population based African American experience. And part of it is due to what's called the Great Migration. And you see hundreds of thousands of African Americans moving to the north in search of jobs in what's called the Great Migration. This is the first Great Migration, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about as you look at this map that's beneath my head. In yellow, you can see people that were migrating from the deep south, sharecroppers, right? Spending most of their time on farms where they give the large portions of their crops to their landlords for rent. What we're beginning to see are some of these industrial jobs and families over several generations having saved up enough money that now they're able to escape sharecropping and move up the East Coast into places like New York and Philly and Boston and DC and Baltimore and take industrial jobs in those cities in this time frame of 1916 to 1930. And remember, this starts, right, during World War II or World War I when we see African Americans in those factory jobs. And you're going to see those people migrating from the deep south of Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, etc., up into Central America, Chicago, Minneapolis, etc., and then Louisiana, Texas, heading out westward into California, up into Minnesota, and so on. This great migration is huge because in neighborhoods in all of these major cities, you're finally going to see vibrant African American urban communities with real middle class experiences. One classic example of this is in New York City. This neighborhood still exists. It's called Harlem, and I outlined it here for you. This is a part of Manhattan Island. It's just south of the Bronx, right here. This section right here, this is all the Bronx. And just south of the Bronx is Harlem, and it's primarily African American. It's just north of Central Park, and it's a place where African Americans, since they're coming together, they're able to bring culture which had been spread all over the South, widespread rural South, and you've condensed it, you've compacted it into this teeny tiny little area on an island. And that means that culture is going to have a chance to just kind of bloom and blossom. It's going to be amazing. The outpouring of art and literature, poetry and music that comes from the Harlem Renaissance and other cities across the country where neighborhoods like Harlem are. So, for example, you're going to see writers like Claude McKay and Langston Hughes begin to emerge, and they become the foundations of the modern civil rights movement, a real change to our cultural identity, because as black culture is starting to be exported to the white north in these black ethnic neighborhoods, what you're seeing are writers like Langston Hughes and Claude McKay challenge racism. They're looking at the experience of African Americans, and they're saying, you know what? We are not satisfied. We are not accepting of this position that we are in society. We need to do something about that. Langston Hughes is huge about that. Claude McKay really focuses almost on the kind of the emotional side of that experience as well. These writers inspire leaders like that we'll talk about, like Marcus Garvey and Booker T. Washington and many others that help really push the civil rights movement forward into the 1940s, 50s, and 60s.